Welcome. You're watching the Norwegian News with your host, Father Deacon Ananias. Today I'm here to announce my paper which has been accepted and I'm going to be delivering at IOTA conference in Iasi, Romania this upcoming January 2019. The IOTA conference, IOTA standing for the International Orthodox Theological Association, is in fact the largest conference of Orthodox clergy and academics ever held in the modern age, and it's going to include over 300 highly esteemed academics and scholars, speakers from over 30 different countries around the world. So I'm honored, and in fact I'm humbled to be able to speak at this conference and to be able to speak on such an important topic. My paper is entitled An Eastern Orthodox Understanding of the Dangers of Modernity and Technology. So basically what I'd like to do today is discuss a little bit about what my paper will be covering and the various issues and concerns that I'll be attempting to address. In my paper, I argue that the ideologies arising out of modernity, its use of technology, pose one of the greatest threats to Eastern Orthodox Christians today. Since the term modern basically covers a very large period in history ranging from the 1400s onward, as well as referring to the era arising out of the Enlightenment, roughly beginning somewhere in 1870 and 1910 up to the present, I'll attempt to focus on various characterizations, specifically arising out of the Enlightenment project that are commonly associated with modernity. The aforementioned time periods can basically be characterized by the following: the rise of industrialization, the devaluation and attempt to deconstruct nation states, the emergence of globalism, the rise of consumerism, the birth of Marxist and socialist thought, the creation of representative democracy, urbanization, an increased emphasis on the positive sciences, and yes, you guessed it, technology. The proliferation of mass media, the radical individualism, the Cartesian skepticism and Kantian skepticism or distrust of both tradition and religion in exchange for autonomous reason, or at least man's pretended autonomous reason. So let me phrase this in terms of a question. What is the driving force behind the technological age? And let me put it another way. More precisely, what are the ideologies that dominate the technological movement, and what are their intended goals? Well, I want to argue that the dominant ideology of our culture, known as secular humanism, is the driving force born out of modernity and the Enlightenment, the result of which is not only a culture that's both deaf and blind to God and His church, but as the late, great Tristan Engelhardt, dear friend of mine and mentor, has stated in his most recent book, After God, Morality and Bioethics in the Secular Age. In eschewing a God's eye perspective, morality, bioethics, the state, and the meaning of life are all approached as if everything came from nowhere, were going nowhere, and for no enduring and ultimate purpose. So, not only is secularism not a neutral position, despite what the secular humanist is going to preach and tell you, secularism is a culture that's both hostile to God and completely incompatible with Orthodox Christianity, thus in aspiring to create a universal ethics in terms of a Kantian paradigm that would be binding upon all humanity in a rational universal religion and morality, a religio catholica, as it were. The Enlightenment project, which we are the inheritors, sought, as Nietzsche had predicted, to replace God with an idealized vision of man and mankind. All we have to do is think upon Nietzsche's famous Übermensch, the Overman, to realize this point. Now, although this universal religion naively hope to eliminate wars, and yes, don't be fooled, it is a religion. While it hoped to eliminate wars, conflicts, and bloodshed, mankind's history basically, by substituting secular rationality and morals for God, it nevertheless brought about precisely the opposite of what it intended and what was desired. It brought about bloodshed, genocide, war, and radical isolation. For example, Tristram Engelhardt goes on to explain in After God, secular reason led not to perpetual peace, but to the French Revolution's reign of terror, and eventually to the slaughter of tens of millions by the secular, rationalist regimes of Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot, all in the pursuit of a supposedly philosophically justified moral vision that had its own secular bioethics. So consequently, the Enlightenment project has really been conceded and considered to be a terrible failure. As Judd Owen states, today, belief in the comprehensive philosophic teaching of the Enlightenment appears to lie in ruins, and few hope that any other comprehensive philosophy could successfully replace it. That this is despair, and its considerable extent is due to a radical critique of reason as such. So, the failures of the Enlightenment project really have been replaced with a culture of despair, a postmodern world that's inherited all the sins of modernity but without the original optimism, leaving the secular world without any coherent idea of community or proper ends, or proper human ends, that is, teloi, the Greek word. Consequently, it's destroyed the moral and very ontological framework that's necessary for conceiving of a proper and correct anthropology. In short, the dominant culture of the West and its rejection of God and holy orthodoxy has brought about the abolition of man. This echoes the famous dictum, optima corrupta pessima. That is, the best things corrupted become the worst. All we have to do is think about Lucifer, the highest created being, angel of light, so great, but his fall was even greater. The best things corrupted really do become the worst. Now, harking back upon Nietzsche's famous prediction, let us turn to Nietzsche's famous work in The Gay Science, where it's entitled The Madman. Have you not heard that the madman who lit the lantern in the bright morning hours ran to the marketplace and cried incessantly, I seek God, I seek God. As many of those who did not believe in God were standing around just then, he provoked much laughter. Why, did he get lost? Said one. Did he lose his way like a child? Said another. Or is he hiding? Is he afraid of us? Has he gone on a voyage? Or emigrated? Thus they yelled and laughed. The madman jumped in their midst, and he pierced them with his glances. Whither is God? He cried. All shall tell you. We have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers, but how have we done this? How were we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What did we do when we unchained the earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? And whither are we moving now? Away from all suns? Are we not plunging continually backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there any up or down, even left? Are we not straying as though through an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? Is it not night and more night coming all the while? Must not lanterns be lit in the morning? Do we not hear anything yet of the noise of the gravediggers who are burying God? And do we not smell anything yet of God's decomposition? Gods too decompose. God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. How shall we, the murderers of all murderers, comfort ourselves? What was the holiest and most powerful of all that the world has yet owned? has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed far too great for us? Must we not ourselves become gods simply to seem worthy of it? There has never been a greater deed, and whoever will be born after us, for the sake of this deed, he will be part of a higher history than all history hitherto. Here the madman fell silent and looked again at his listeners, and they too were silent, and they stared at him in astonishment. At last he threw his lantern on the ground, and he broke it and went out. I come too early, he said to them. My time has not yet come. This tremendous event is still on its way, still wandering, and it has not reached the ears of men. Lightning and thunder require time. The light of the stars require time. Deeds require time, even after they're done, before they can be seen and heard. And this deed is still more distant from them than the most distant stars, and yet they have done it themselves. It has been related further that on the same day the madman entered the divers churches, and there sang his Requiem aeternam Deo. Led out and called to account, he said to have replied each time, what are these churches now if they are not the tombs and sepulchres of the God? So Nietzsche is predicting here what has occurred in modernity and the Enlightenment. Modernity really can be marked by the rejection, or as Nietzsche says, the attempt to kill God. And post-modernity, marked by the rejection of Christ. And once this occurs, as Nietzsche points out, without a universal narrative, a universal morality, a universal and comprehensive philosophical understanding and objective truth about the world, it becomes all relative. What is up? What is down? What are we to do? We are led into, as Richard Rorty says, relativism. All these competing narratives, multiculturalism, all incommensurate with one another. There is no universal prescribed bioethics or morality for mankind anymore, and so the postmodern man lies in despair. Therefore, what I'm attempting to illustrate in this is not only the predictions of Nietzsche, who said when he was trying to warn his time, they couldn't hear it. It's too early. This deed takes time. Even deeds take time for us to hear and see, and we're living in the afterbirth, in the age where this is occurring. It was too early then. And therefore, what I want to illustrate is that my paper is an attempt to outline the historical and ideological errors that have arisen out of the Enlightenment and modernity, and all of which have given rise to the various problems that we see today and the problems with technology. The atheistic and Western moral philosophic project of our contemporary secular culture has rejected God and the Holy Orthodox Church. And in his arrogance, Western man has attempted to remove God from every aspect of human life, erecting himself, the secular image of man, without the imago Dei, without the image of God, and erected himself in place of God in order that he may prove the famous Protagorean dictum of all things, the measure is man, of the things that are, and of the things that are not, that they are not. Therefore, emboldened by this, emboldened by such power and perceived freedom from the, quote, tyranny of God and religion, modern man and modernity itself rejected tradition. And what it did in replace of that, in replace of God, is it mechanized nature. It abolished any real objective essences in the world. And it created the world in man's image, rather than God creating man in his image. This resulted in a set of ideologies and demoralized practices that are all viewed, or shall I say, that viewed all of nature, including man himself, without any real objective meaning, and therefore included an understanding of nature to be something entirely malleable according to one's own personal choices. This is the techne. This is the tool which these ideologies are using technology to manipulate nature, because now there is no truth. There is no objective meaning. There is no objective essences that makes man who he is by nature. And therefore, what we see is that without any ultimate point of moral orientation, meaning, or enforcement of morality, and without the guidance of the Orthodox Church, the contemporary modern world really takes the anthropological and moral considerations and it renders them into, quote-unquote, micro-lifestyle choices. It's relativism. Hence, we now live in a morality, or shall I say, a morally barren landscape, ripe for growing tyranny in all its various forms. For as history has shown over and again, when a culture abandons objective truth and morality, it really removes the primary defenses against that tyranny. And truth is replaced with power. So, if you like my video, if you like my paper topic, please find my channel, The Norwegian News, like and subscribe. I need more subscribers. I have a new channel and I'll be uploading much more content, podcasts, lectures, and videos. And if you have any questions or comments, specifically about the paper that I'll be presenting at IOTA on an Orthodox understanding of the dangers of modernity and technology, please feel free to leave questions and comments. Post them. Thank you, and God bless you.